The mysterious encounter. The planet was quiet, too quiet. There was a strange stillness in the air, as if the land itself was holding its breath. A cold wind blew across the barren landscape, whipping the soldier's cloak around his body. He had been assigned to this distant world for a mission, though he wasn't entirely sure what it was. All he knew was that the place had a reputation for being dangerous, and his superiors had warned him to stay alert. He moved cautiously through the rocky terrain, scanning the horizon. The planet's sun was setting, casting long shadows over the land. He had to find shelter soon. As he walked, his eyes fell upon something unusual in the distance. A figure, strangely human, yet not quite. She stood there, motionless, her dark eyes locked on him from across the barren wasteland. Her appearance was unsettling. She wore a collar, a heavy metallic thing that wrapped around her neck. It was a collar of a kind he had seen before, one used by slave traders across the galaxy. His heart sank. The soldier had heard of the ruthless slavers that operated on this planet, and the sight of the collar made his blood boil. Without a second thought, he approached her. His mission was clear: free the oppressed, protect those who couldn't defend themselves. As he neared her, he noticed something strange. She wasn't afraid, not like the others he had seen who were shackled and broken. Her posture was calm, almost serene, as if she had accepted her fate long ago. But her eyes, those eyes were different. There was something in them, a spark of intelligence, a glimmer of defiance. "Hey," the soldier called out cautiously, stepping closer. "Are you okay?" She didn't answer, just stood there. The collar around her neck glowed faintly, its energy pulsing with a strange rhythm. The soldier frowned. He had never seen a collar like this one. Most collars were made to suppress a slave's powers or control their movements, but this one seemed different. His instincts told him to be cautious, but his desire to help overruled his doubts. He reached out slowly, his hand brushing the collar, trying to figure out how to remove it. As his fingers touched the metal, a faint pulse of energy surged through him, like a shockwave. The soldier pulled back in surprise, his heart racing. The woman's gaze never left him, and for the first time the soldier noticed a small, almost imperceptible smile on her lips. She said nothing, but there was a strange sense of understanding between them. For a moment he hesitated. Something about her made him uneasy, but he couldn't walk away. He had to do something. This was his mission, his duty. With a deep breath, he placed his hands around the collar and pulled. The metal shifted, and with a sharp click it came off. But as the collar fell to the ground, the soldier felt something he couldn't explain. It was like the air had thickened around them, like the world itself was holding its breath. The woman's smile faded and her eyes shifted from calm to something darker, something more knowing. The soldier stepped back, confused. Had he made a mistake? The collar was off, but the weight in the air didn't lift. Something wasn't right. And the woman who had seemed so calm just moments ago now looked different. He didn't know it yet, but removing the collar had just begun to unravel a mystery far bigger than he could have ever imagined. The silent stranger. The air grew heavier as the soldier took a step back, his eyes never leaving the woman. Something had shifted when the collar fell to the ground, and he could feel it, an unspoken change in the atmosphere. The wind had stopped blowing, the planet's quiet stillness becoming almost oppressive. She stood motionless, her dark eyes locked on him. The faintest hint of a smile tugged at the corners of her lips, but it wasn't one of gratitude or relief. No, it was something far more cryptic, as if she knew something he didn't, something he couldn't yet understand. "Who are you?" the soldier asked, his voice low, uncertain. The question slipped from his lips without thought, as though it had been sitting there waiting to be asked, but she didn't answer. She didn't speak at all. Instead, she simply raised her hand and pointed toward the horizon, her fingers moving slowly, almost deliberately, as if she were tracing a line in the air. Her gesture seemed deliberate, yet it left the soldier with more questions than answers. Are you going to help me or just stand there? The soldier asked, frustration creeping into his voice. He had freed her from the collar, but now she seemed even more distant, almost like an enigma wrapped in silence. The woman took a slow step toward him, her eyes never leaving his, and the soldier found himself instinctively stepping back. There was an unsettling quality to her presence. She wasn't hostile, but she wasn't friendly either. Her body language was cold, controlled, yet there was something dangerous lurking beneath the surface. It was then that the soldier noticed the collar on the ground. It wasn't just any collar. There was something about it. The material was, unlike anything he had ever seen. It didn't just look alien, it seemed alive, as if it were a part of her, a part of something far more intricate than he had realized. Before he could reach for it, she moved swiftly, kneeling down to pick it up. With one fluid motion, she pressed it back into place around her neck. The collar clicked back into position and the soldier blinked in disbelief. "What are you doing?" he demanded, his voice tinged with panic. The woman's eyes met his again. The same unreadable expression was there, but now there was a shift, a glimmer of something else. There was an edge to her gaze, a quiet warning. She didn't speak, but the tension in the air spoke louder than words. "I don't understand," the soldier murmured, feeling a knot of unease tighten in his stomach. "What's going on here?" For a long moment she said nothing. But then, almost imperceptibly, she took a step closer to him. Her movements were so graceful, so deliberate, that it sent a chill down his spine. The soldier didn't know whether to run or stay. "Not everything is as it seems," she said, her voice a soft whisper, as if she were speaking to herself more than to him. He frowned, unsure whether he had heard her correctly. The words hung in the air between them, an enigma he couldn't quite unravel. Suddenly, the ground beneath their feet trembled, a low rumble that vibrated through the soldier's boots. His eyes snapped to the horizon. In the distance, dark figures emerged from behind the rocks, moving in quick, calculated strides. They were coming for them. The woman glanced at him, her eyes flashing with recognition, and without another word, she turned toward the approaching threat. The soldier's heart raced as the figures got closer. There was something unnerving about their movement, like they were predators closing in on their prey. "Stay close," the woman said, her voice cold and commanding for the first time. She didn't look back as she moved to confront them. The soldier hesitated for a split second, then followed. Whatever was happening here, whatever secret she held, he had no choice now but to follow. There was no turning back. The moment he had removed that collar, his fate had been sealed. The truth beneath the collar. The air felt thick with the weight of unspoken truths. The soldier moved silently behind the woman, his mind racing with questions that only seemed to multiply with every passing second. Who was she really? What had he just unleashed by removing that collar? And why did he feel like he had stumbled into something much bigger than himself? As they walked, the silence between them grew, stretching into something uncomfortable. The woman's pace was steady and sure, as if she had no fear of the approaching figures, though they were growing closer. The soldier, on the other hand, could feel the hairs on the back of his neck stand on end. Something was coming, something far more dangerous than he had anticipated. The figures in the distance were now unmistakable. Armored soldiers, their movements coordinated and precise. They weren't just random mercenaries or local thugs. These were professionals. The soldier recognized their insignia from the few briefings he had received before landing on this forsaken planet. The Intergalactic Enforcement Corps, a militarized organization with a reputation for ruthless efficiency. The woman's gaze flicked to the approaching soldiers, but she didn't flinch. She didn't even break her stride. The soldier, however, felt a rush of adrenaline. The sheer confidence in her demeanor was unsettling. He didn't know whether to admire her or be terrified of her. "They're coming for you, aren't they?" the soldier finally asked, his voice tight. "Who are they?" For the first time since he had met her, the woman looked at him. Her expression was unreadable, but there was a flicker of something, perhaps recognition, perhaps disdain, in her eyes. "They're not coming for me," she said softly. "They're coming for us." The soldier frowned, confusion swirling in his mind. What does that mean? What's going on here? She didn't answer, and instead, she took a deep breath, closing her eyes for just a moment. When she opened them again, they were filled with an intensity that made the soldier take a step back. "The collar," she began, her voice low and steady, "wasn't meant to keep me in check. It was meant to hide me, to keep my true identity a secret." The soldier's brow furrowed in disbelief. "What? But I thought it was a slave collar. It looked like one." She shook her head. "It was, but not in the way you think. It was a mask, a falsehood, a way to make me blend in with the rest of the oppressed. The collar kept me from being recognized by the right people." The soldier's mind spun. This was all happening too fast. He had removed the collar thinking he was doing the right thing, thinking he was freeing her from slavery. But now the truth was more complicated than he had ever imagined. "Who are you, really?" he asked, his voice a mix of awe and fear. The woman's lips parted slightly as though she were about to answer, but before she could, a voice rang out from the distance, cutting through the tense silence. "Stop right there," a commanding voice shouted. The soldier turned to see a group of the Enforcement Corps soldiers advancing rapidly toward them. Their weapons were drawn, and they were moving with lethal precision. The woman didn't hesitate. In a single fluid motion, she stepped in front of the soldier, her body positioning itself protectively. The soldier instinctively reached for his own weapon, but something in the way she moved stopped him. "You should have left the collar on," she said, her voice almost a whisper but with a deadly edge to it. The soldier swallowed hard, trying to ignore the chill creeping down his spine. He had no idea what was coming, but he knew one thing for sure: there was no turning back now. The soldiers were getting closer. There was no time for questions, no time to think. The woman was ready to fight, but the soldier wasn't sure if he was ready to follow her into whatever war was about to unfold. The truth was, he didn't even know if he could trust her. But there was something about her. Something in the way she carried herself, in the way she had spoken, that made him feel like he didn't have a choice. The hidden power, the ground beneath their feet began to shake as the soldiers from the Enforcement Corps advanced. The air grew colder, and the silence between them felt heavier. The soldier's fingers tightened around the hilt of his weapon, but it was clear. He wasn't prepared for what was coming. The woman beside him remained still, unfazed, as if she were no longer even aware of the danger closing in. Her expression was calm, even serene, but there was something dangerous about her stillness. It was as though she were waiting for the right moment to move, not with fear but with intent. The soldier wanted to shout at her, to ask her why she wasn't running, why she wasn't scared. But before he could say anything, she turned her head slightly toward him, her dark eyes piercing through him. There was a coldness in her gaze and yet an underlying sense of trust that made him pause. "Stay behind me," she murmured, and for reasons he couldn't explain, he obeyed. As the soldiers neared, their footsteps now echoing through the stillness, the soldier couldn't help but notice something odd. Their movements were too coordinated, too perfect. They weren't rushing, no, they were taking their time, as if they knew exactly how things were going to play out. One of the soldiers, a tall figure clad in black armor, stepped forward and raised his weapon, aiming it directly at the woman. His voice was sharp, almost mechanical as he barked, "Step away from her, she's coming with us." The woman didn't move. She didn't flinch or even react to the weapon pointed at her face. She simply stood there, her eyes cold and focused as though the soldier didn't exist. Then, in an instant, everything changed. With no warning, the woman moved faster than the soldier could process. It was as though the world around her had slowed, and she had become the only thing in motion. Her hand shot out, grasping the barrel of the soldier's gun before he could even fire. The moment her fingers touched the weapon, a sudden pulse of energy surged through the air, like an invisible force snapping into place. The soldier's gun crumpled in her grip like paper, twisting and bending until it was nothing but a useless heap of metal. The soldier who held it staggered back, his eyes wide with shock, but before he could react, the woman was already on him, Her movements were fluid, precise, and with terrifying speed. She didn't just fight with physical strength. There was something more, something far greater than the soldier had ever imagined. With a swift motion, she disarmed him, knocking him to the ground with a single strike. The other soldiers hesitated for a moment, unsure of what to do. They had never seen anything like this before. They had expected her to be weak, to crumble under their force. But instead she was something else entirely, something far more dangerous. The soldiers stood frozen, watching as the woman dispatched each soldier with effortless grace. She wasn't just skilled, she was powerful. And there was something in the way she moved that made him realize this wasn't just a fight for survival. This was something much more deliberate. With each strike, her true nature became clearer. She was not just a prisoner or a slave. She was a force to be reckoned with. When the last soldier was down, the woman took a moment to look around at the fallen figures, her chest rising and falling with each breath. Her gaze flicked to the soldier standing behind her, and for the first time she spoke. "Do you understand now?" she asked, her voice low but commanding. "I wasn't ever a slave. I was never meant to be held down." The soldier could only nod, his mind reeling. He had thought he was freeing her from captivity, but now he realized he had unwittingly unleashed something far more powerful than he could have imagined. But even as the tension of the moment began to settle, something in the woman's expression changed. Her eyes darkened as she scanned the horizon, as if something unseen was approaching. "They're not the only ones looking for me," she murmured, more to herself than to him. The soldier felt a chill run down his spine. He had thought the enforcement corps was the greatest threat, but now he wasn't so sure. The real danger was just beginning to reveal itself. The decision, the aftermath of the fight, left the air thick with tension. The soldier could barely process what had just happened. He had watched helpless as the woman had taken down the enforcement corps soldiers one by one, each move so fluid, so calculated, it seemed as though she had become part of the very air itself. Now, as silence settled over the battlefield, the soldier felt his pulse slow, his mind trying to catch up with what he had just witnessed. She had been powerful, too powerful, more than just skilled. She was something else entirely. The collar had been meant to hide that power, to keep the world from knowing what she really was, but it was more than that. The collar had hidden her true identity, her true mission. The soldier had no idea who she really was, or what she had been fighting for all this time. All he knew was that she had just changed his entire perception of the universe. "Why didn't you tell me?" he asked, his voice tight with frustration. The words had been building up inside him ever since she had taken off the collar. "Why didn't you explain all of this to me?" She didn't answer immediately. Instead, she simply stared at him, her expression unreadable. It was like she was weighing something inside her mind, considering whether or not to speak. Her eyes flicked to the horizon, scanning for more threats. "I couldn't trust you," she said finally, her voice quiet but firm. "Not yet." The soldier's frustration deepened. "So you let me think you were a slave just to keep me in the dark? You used me." "I never used you," she snapped, her eyes flashing for the first time. "I needed you to make a choice. Your choice." The soldier shook his head in disbelief. He was still trying to wrap his mind around everything. Around her, around the collar, around the fact that he had just helped unleash a deadly force into the world. She had been playing him, no doubt, but part of him couldn't help but wonder if it was all necessary. "So what now?" he asked, the weight of the situation crashing down on him. He had thought this mission was just another assignment, but now it felt like the entire galaxy was suddenly on the line. The woman looked at him, her expression softening just slightly. "Now, we fight," she said simply. "Now, we take the fight to those who think they control everything, to those who have been hiding the truth for too long." The soldier's mind raced. There were so many questions, too many to ask all at once. But one stood out above the rest. Who are you, really? The words escaped his lips before he could stop them. I mean, what's your true mission? What is this war you're talking about? She turned toward him, her eyes darkening. I am a leader of a rebellion. Not just any rebellion, but the last one that can stop the coming storm. The ones in power. The ones who control everything from the shadows. They've been manipulating the galaxy for centuries. They are the real threat. And I've been fighting them for longer than you could imagine. The soldier took a step back. His heart pounded in his chest as the weight of her words hit him. This wasn't some small local rebellion. This was about something much bigger, something that could change the course of history. But why me? He asked, his voice cracking slightly. Why bring me into this? I'm just a soldier. I'm not some freedom fighter. She took a deep breath, her gaze steady. Because you're not just any soldier. You're someone who knows what it means to fight for what's right. You're someone who can see the bigger picture when others can't. And right now, you're my best shot at taking down the ones who think they're untouchable. The soldier's mind spun. He had never thought of himself as anything special. He was just following orders, doing his job. But now, everything had changed. He wasn't just a cog in a machine anymore. He was part of something much larger, a battle that could reshape the galaxy. He looked at her, his heart heavy with uncertainty. But if we fight, if we go after them, we'll be hunted. There's no way they'll let us go without retaliation. She met his gaze, unwavering. We've already been hunted. The question is whether we will run or fight back. The soldier felt a wave of resolve wash over him. It was clear now, there was no running from this. No matter what he decided, he was already in too deep. And the path ahead would be filled with dangers far greater than anything he had ever encountered. For the first time since meeting her, he didn't feel like he was alone in this fight. The woman, the mysterious, powerful stranger, had given him a purpose, a mission that was bigger than himself. Without another word, he made his decision. We fight, he said, his voice steady with newfound determination. The woman gave him a brief, almost imperceptible nod, and together, they turned toward the horizon, toward the storm that was about to break. The fight for freedom. The horizon was darkening, the weight of their decision settling like a heavy cloud overhead. The soldier couldn't shake the feeling that they had crossed a line, that whatever happened next, there would be no turning back. The woman, no longer just a mysterious figure with a hidden past, had become his only ally in a war far greater than he had imagined. They moved swiftly, covering ground in silence. The woman led the way, her movements fluid and precise like she was following an invisible map only she could see. The soldier, for the first time, felt as if he were playing catch-up. She had already seen this battle before. To her, it was nothing new. But to him it was like stepping into the unknown. They're going to come after us, the soldier muttered, glancing over his shoulder. They'll be relentless. They already are, she replied, her voice low and steady, but we'll make them regret underestimating us. He glanced at her, unsure whether he should feel comforted or frightened by her confidence. There was something in the way she spoke, the way she moved, that made it clear. She wasn't just fighting for survival. She was fighting for something much bigger. As they entered a narrow canyon, the soldier couldn't help but notice the silence that had descended around them. There were no birds in the air, no signs of life. The world seemed to be holding its breath. And then, just as he started to feel uneasy, he heard it, a low hum growing louder by the second. The soldier tensed, instinctively reaching for his weapon. The woman didn't flinch. She knew exactly what it was. They're here, she said, her tone almost disappointed. Just as expected. Before the soldier could react, a fleet of hovercraft appeared on the horizon, their engines roaring like thunder. The enforcement corps was coming for them, and they weren't coming to negotiate. They were coming to kill. The soldier felt his pulse quicken. He had faced hostile forces before, but this was different. The sheer number of hovercraft descending toward them felt like an overwhelming tide, too massive to fight head-on. He turned to the woman, his voice shaky. "We can't fight them all, we'll be outgunned." The woman didn't answer immediately. Instead, she raised her hand, and for a moment the soldier thought she was going to give up. But then, he saw it. A ripple of energy shot out from her palm, a faint glow of light that rippled through the air like a wave. The soldier felt it before. He saw it. A surge of power that resonated with something deep inside him. It was the same energy he had felt when he had first touched the collar, only this time, it was stronger, more intense. "Follow me," she said, turning on her heel. Without a second thought, she moved with purpose, and the soldier followed, albeit more hesitantly. They didn't run. No, they were going to fight, but on their terms. The woman had no intention of waiting for the enemy to come to them. Instead, she was going to meet them head-on, and the soldier was going to learn just how far she was willing to push him. The hovercraft were closing in, and the air was thick with the sound of their engines, but the woman's movements were calm, almost graceful. She raised both hands this time, and the energy that surged from her was palpable, filling the air like a storm cloud just before it breaks. The soldier felt his heart racing, his instincts screaming at him to run, to hide, to find cover. But the woman wasn't afraid. She wasn't running. She was preparing to fight in a way he had never seen before. With a single gesture, she launched a pulse of energy into the sky, the shockwave reverberating through the canyon. The hovercraft faltered, their systems glitching as they attempted to regain control. But it wasn't enough to stop them. They were still coming. "We have to take them down," the woman said, turning to him. "Now." The soldier swallowed hard. He wasn't sure what kind of plan the woman had in mind, but he knew one thing for sure. This wasn't just a fight. This was a battle for their lives. He raised his weapon, but before he could fire, the woman moved again, faster than he could track. She jumped, her body propelled by the same energy that now crackled around them. She landed on one of the hovercraft with a force that sent a shock wave through the metal. The craft shuddered, and, with one precise strike, she disabled its systems. The soldier's mouth fell open. She was fighting with an intensity and control that he couldn't even fathom. He had never seen anything like it before. "Your turn," she called out, and before he knew it, she had already disabled another craft, leaving it drifting in midair, disabled but still hovering. For the first time, the soldier felt a spark of confidence. The fight was on, and he wasn't going to stand idly by while she fought alone. He aimed his weapon at the nearest craft and fired. The shot struck the hovercraft's propulsion unit, sending it spiraling to the ground with a crash. But the woman was already moving again, already onto the next target, her energy crackling like lightning. She was more than just a soldier. She was a storm. And as they fought side by side, the soldier realized that, for the first time, he wasn't just following orders. He was part of something bigger, something far more dangerous. Together, they would make the enemy regret coming for them. And together, they would set the course for a new war. A war for freedom, for truth, and for the galaxy's future. And there was no turning back. The final choice. The battlefield lay in ruins, the air thick with the smell of burning metal and scorched earth. The soldier could feel the weight of the chaos pressing down on him. Hovercraft were scattered, their engines flickering out, while the bodies of the fallen soldiers from the Enforcement Corps lay in twisted heaps. The woman stood at the center of the destruction, her eyes scanning the horizon, her breathing steady as if nothing had happened. Her calm demeanor was almost unnatural after the violent storm they had just unleashed. The soldier wiped his brow, his hand trembling slightly as he surveyed the aftermath. They had done it, barely, but they had fought their way through. The last of the hovercraft had been destroyed and the enemy had been repelled. But the victory felt hollow. The truth weighed heavily on him now. This battle was only one small step in a much larger conflict, and the war wasn't over. He turned to the woman who was now walking toward him with that same unshakable confidence. She wasn't just a soldier. She was a symbol of something far greater, and the soldier was starting to realize just how deep this rabbit hole went. "We've done it," he said, his voice still tinged with disbelief. But this was just a skirmish. They won't let us walk away from this. They'll come for us harder next time. She stopped a few feet from him, her expression unreadable. There was a moment of silence before she spoke, her voice soft but firm. They've already come for us, she said, her gaze never wavering. The question is, will you run, or will you stand and fight with me? The soldier swallowed, his chest tight. This wasn't what he had signed up for. He had been a soldier, following orders, completing missions, and going home when it was done. But this was a war with no end in sight, a war that would tear apart everything he had ever known. He looked at the woman, his heart heavy with the weight of his choices. I don't know if I can do this, he said quietly, his voice betraying the doubt he was feeling. I'm not you. I don't know what you are. I thought I was helping you. But now it feels like I'm in way over my head. She studied him for a long moment, her gaze unwavering as if searching for something deep inside him. You're right, she said finally, her voice low and steady. You're not me. You're not some perfect soldier, and you're not some untouchable hero. But that's why I need you. Because you're someone who can make a choice, someone who understands that this isn't just about the fight. It's about what we're fighting for. The soldier stared at her, his mind reeling. Everything he thought he knew about this mission, about her, was crumbling. She wasn't just a rebel leader. She was a force of nature, someone with the power to change the course of history. But what was the cost? What was he willing to sacrifice for a cause he barely understood? You're asking me to choose, he said, his voice low. But I don't know if I can. I've always followed orders. I've always known what's next. This is different. The woman stepped closer to him, her expression softening just slightly, though the fire in her eyes never dimmed. Every choice we make in this war will change the galaxy, she said. But it's not just about the galaxy. It's about you. It's about whether you believe in something greater than yourself, and whether you're willing to fight for it. The soldier felt the weight of her words settle in his chest. He had always done what was expected of him, following the orders given to him without question. But now, everything was different. The world had shifted beneath his feet, and he had been thrust into a battle that felt both too large and too personal to ignore. He glanced at the wreckage of the battle, the bodies of the soldiers, and then back at the woman. She wasn't just some stranger anymore. She wasn't a mysterious prisoner with a hidden past. She was the future of something far greater than he had ever imagined. She had shown him the truth, the hidden war that was being fought in the shadows of the galaxy. But now, the decision was his. Could he truly stand beside her and embrace this fight? Could he sacrifice everything he had known for a cause that was still so unclear? His heart pounded in his chest as he thought of the consequences. His life, his mission, everything had changed in a matter of days. But the soldier knew one thing for certain. There was no going back. The woman was watching him closely, waiting for his answer, her eyes filled with something like patience but also an unspoken urgency. Finally, he spoke, his voice steady but filled with conviction. I'll fight. I'll stand with you. The woman's gaze softened for the first time since they had met. Then it's begun, she said, and the weight of her words hung heavy in the air. The soldier didn't know what the future held, but one thing was clear. The galaxy was about to change. And he, along with the woman who had pulled him into this war, would be the ones to fight for that change, no matter the cost. The final choice had been made.